This video explains how to complete a monthly invoice for the specified rate unit cost payment type. To complete a monthly invoice on any payment type, you must first set up a master template. The master template file and how-to video can be found on the TxDOT website. Once you have set up your master template file, open it up and click Save As. Name the file with your firm name, the contract and work authorization numbers, and the invoice number. This step keeps your master template clean for all future billings. The Instructions tab is the first one on the left. This section contains detailed instructions and important policies pertaining to the rest of the tabs in the invoice sheet. Each section of the instructions has a link that takes you directly to that tab. Within each tab, you can link back to the relevant instructions section. The second tab on the template is the function code list, for your reference and information as you populate labor summary sections with current and legacy function codes and account numbers. The COA Invoice Conversion tab is for TxDOT use only and is auto-populated from the Invoice tab. On the Invoice tab and all others where you will enter monthly data, all of the master template cells that were highlighted in blue have already been completed, and now you will be filling the remaining yellow cells with your specific monthly information. Start with your provider invoice number in the top right. The TxDOT invoice number is for internal use only. Leave that cell blank. Fill in the billing period start and end dates, and then the fiscal year, which runs from September 1st to August 31st of the next year. We are entering 2020 since this billing example is for a July 2020 invoice. The cells shown in white will auto-populate as you enter data in each of the tabs to the right of the Invoice tab. The yellow cells in the Invoice Detail section are not filled in at this time. This will be done at the end of the process when we come back to this tab. The next tab is the Signature Authority page. It is not filled out until the rest of the invoice is completed. In the Work Authorization Financial Status Summary, you will fill in previous invoice billing fields if you have them. In this case, we don't. The only thing left to fill in on this tab is to select the sub-providers that will be billing for this period. Go to the drop-down which contains the list of providers created in your master template setup and select the sub-provider names that will be billing for this invoice. Note that LandTAC is now listed as a sub-provider here on the Summary of Total Amount Invoiced tab. The rest of this tab is auto-populated as we enter data in the rest of the tabs. The Labor Summary Office tab is where you begin to enter the detailed data on work performed for the billing period. This is also where all of the CSJ and function codes for this billing must be entered for use by all of the other tabs in the invoice, even if there is not any billing for the Labor Summary Office category. Select your CSJ and function codes for the services performed on the subtotal lines. Scroll down to subtotal line 1 at row 42 and select the first CSJ and function code from the drop-downs. As you can see, the cells populate upward 30 lines with the numbers and codes selected. Next, scroll down to row 73 for the second subtotal line. For this billing, we only have one CSJ and two different function codes, but you would keep going every 30 lines for every CSJ and function code to be used in this invoice billing if you have more. Scroll back up to the Employee column, select names from the drop-down and fill in the first employee that will be billing for the Labor Summary Office category under this CSJ and function code, the applicable staffing category for the work done on this CSJ and function code, and the number of hours being billed for this period. Rates and totals are auto-populated from the master template setup, so if a rate needs to be changed, it must be done from the Master Template Setup tab. Select the remaining employees, staffing categories, and hours worked for this CSJ and function code. Next, scroll down to line 43, the first line for function code 150, and just as in the first subtotal section, select the names, staffing categories, and total hours billed for this function code. Employees may perform tasks under different CSJ and function codes and under differing staffing categories as we can see here with Leonard. Once you have completed entering all the names, categories, and hours for the Labor Summary Office tab, it's time to roll up the subtotals. Go to the top to Employee Staff Category, column D, and click on the Filter button in the bottom right corner, and then uncheck the blanks and click OK to remove all the blank rows. This means that only information relevant to this billing will show on this tab. Moving now to the Labor Summary Field tab, you will see that your CSJ and function codes are already populated from the Labor Summary Office tab. As a reminder, if you need to add a different CSJ or function code for this tab or any others that follow, it must be done under the Labor Summary Office tab. For this billing, we just have a couple of people that perform services under this one CSJ and function code 130. That information is entered the same way as we did under the Labor Summary Office. These Office and Field tabs are only separated due to a difference in overhead charges. Once the information is completed, roll up your totals by going to Employee Staff Category, column D, and clicking the button in the bottom right corner. Uncheck the blanks box and click OK to remove blanks. This tab is ready to go. Scroll over to Unit Cost Summary and note that again your CSJ and function codes are populated from the Labor Summary Office tab, and we are still working with just two codes for this billing period, 130 and 150. This tab is going to be for billing services that are paid by unit cost and that were set up on the Master Template Setup tab. Click the drop-down and select the type of unit specific to the type of services performed for that billing period. For this example, surveying services were performed, so we select that item. The per unit cost auto-populates, and we note that 10 surveys were done and the total auto-populates. The second type of unit completed for this CSJ and function code is monument setting. Select monument setting from the drop-down menu and then enter the quantity. That will be 10 in this example. The rates and total are auto-populated. Move to the second CSJ and function code. We are also billing for a two-person survey crew. Select two-person survey crew from the drop-down menu and then enter 5 for the quantity completed. The rates and totals will auto-populate. With this tab now complete, go to the column C, type of unit column header, click the down arrow in the lower right corner of the cell. Uncheck the blanks, OK, and the unused rows will roll up. Going into the ODE or Other Direct Expenses tab, once again you will see those CSJ and function codes 130 and 150 for this billing period, and the drop-down menu in the first cell under the Type of Expenses column provides a list of allowable other direct expenses that were entered in the Master Template Setup. Select the expenses being billed. For this period, in this case, we had some certified mail that does not have a fixed rate, so we must fill in the current mailing rate manually here under Actual Rate. For the plat copies, we had 20, and those had a fixed rate, so that auto-calculates from the data on the Master Template Setup. Under Function Code 150, we had some deed copies, which have a fixed rate with 20 of those, so it auto-calculates, and now all the direct expenses are entered for this billing period. We are ready to roll up this tab. Click the down arrow under Type of Expenses, uncheck blanks, then OK, and we are finished with the ODE page. The last tab is the TE or Travel Expense Summary. In order to ensure that you bill the allowable amounts for airfare, lodging, and meals, go back to your work authorization or specific deliverable contract without work authorizations for allowable expenses. For additional information on expenses, refer to the document called Other Direct Expenses Guidance on the TxDOT webpage. Go to the section on travel to see exactly how allowable expenses can and should be billed. For this example, we have one employee who took a 3-day trip for this billing period. On the first line to be used for this trip, we select his name and fill in the start and end dates of the entire trip. The round-trip airfare cost for the entire trip can go on this line. And then beginning in this section of the row, the information applies to day 1 of the trip. So the allowable lodging per night per person is $109, and the taxes charged for each night is $36, and then the total auto-calculates. Now moving into the meals section, we go ahead and note that this is for day 1 per diem. A reminder that per diem meal expenses are not reimbursed at the maximum rate for the first and last days of travel, since those are not considered a full day. So enter the actual cost of the meals for day 1 at $30. Mileage, rental car, fuel, parking, and tolls can all be entered either per day or per trip. So we're going to wait and enter all of these amounts for the total trip. But for day 1, since there was a cab taken from home to the airport, we will enter that cab fare of $25 here. For day 2, the name goes in with the date range as the same day, lodging for that second day, and the per diem for this full day is $58, the maximum allowed. Finally, the last day is entered with lodging and meals. It's the actual, not the full allowable. For the third day, we will reimburse for $25 since that was the actual allowable and spent. We are on the last day of travel, and now it's time to enter the totals for the rental car, the fuel, parking, tolls, and the last taxi cab ride home. All of the expenses for this trip are entered under the CSJ and function code, and there was no travel on the other code. If you need to report mileage for the trip, enter the mileage here. Mileage rates are based upon the state rate at the time the expense was incurred. To change the mileage rate, go to cell M9 that is shaded in red and enter the applicable rate. Go to the drop-down arrow under column C, uncheck the blanks, OK, and this one is ready to go. Now that all other tabs are complete, open the Summary of Total Amount Invoice tab to finalize everything here. First, we are going to roll up blanks. Click on the drop-down arrow in the project column header, uncheck blanks, hit OK. And since also there is a lot of blank sub-provider columns, select all the blank columns, right-click, and hide them so everything is nice and neat. The remaining yellow cells to be completed are for the sub-provider billing amounts for each CSJ function code, and those are $2,500 for one CSJ and function code and $5,000 for the other. Now all the cells are complete in the summary of total amount invoiced. It's important to now double-check all of your tab subtotals, beginning with the Labor Summary Office through the TE Summary, to make sure they have calculated and populated this Summary of Total Amount Invoice tab correctly. And now we need to check the totals. We have a total amount of the invoice at $33,192.72. And continuing to the left, click on the Work Authorization Financial Status Summary, and as noted, make sure that the amount is the same. So $33,192.72 is correct. And to finish out this tab, roll up the sub-provider list since there is only one. Uncheck the blanks box, and this one is rolled up. $33,192.72 is the total here. And then clicking over to the signature page, check the total at the top. It's a match. And to finalize this page, under the Prompt Payment Verification section, enter the provider invoice number for prompt payment verification, and enter the date the provider received payment, the begin service and end service date. And then there is a place for the signature. Lastly, fill in the information on the person that prepared the invoice, name, title, and contact information. And then finally, the provider invoice date. Coming back to the Invoice tab in the Detail section, it's now time to enter final information in the remaining yellow cells. As you can see, the middle cells are pre-populated from the other tabs, but the district or division number needs to go into the first column cells and then the 2-digit PCBU number, which is usually 76. And lastly, using the chart to the right, find the account object of expenditure code that goes with each function code noted and fill that in. So here we see that it is 7253 for both 130 and 150. We have completed this page, so roll up the blanks by clicking on the drop-down arrow in column D, Project Cell. Check that total, $33,192.72. Now check the Signature Authority page and the WA Financial Status page, and then check the Summary of Total Invoiced. And the amounts are the same. Click on the COA Conversion tab and note that all the information has been populated for TxDOT use only. Scroll down, check the total, $33,192.72, and that's correct. Click on the drop-down arrow in the Amount column and uncheck the box to remove blanks. If you have an additional supplemental invoice of a different payment type to include in this billing, there are just a few more steps. Go to the Signature Authority tab and on line 2, click the drop-down and select the type of invoice being added. In this case, we will select Lump Sum. Include the amount of that invoice. We know that $5,000 additional will be billed on this lump sum invoice. And then click over to the Work Authorization Financial Status Summary and note that the amount is added to lines 14 and 15 here, but it will not change the total of this individual invoice. When using a supplemental invoice in this example, the supplemental template is to add a lump sum template. A lump sum template must be set up, and then the billing information must be added to the template per instructions. To identify the lump sum template as a supplemental template identified in the specified rate unit cost template, you will go to the Invoice tab and change the log number to log number 2, just below the top provider invoice number. Be sure to attach the second lump sum invoice and its documentation to the back of this invoice package when you send everything off. For final preparation, right-click on the Instructions tab and select Hide. Right-click on FC, Hide, Master Template, Hide, and your invoice is prepared in the right order. Go to the File, Print, and check that the pages are printing correctly. Adjust margins and delete blank pages as needed. Do a Save as PDF or Print to PDF. Check the print view of each page and produce the PDF. Be sure to attach all your supporting documentation to the back of the invoice and send the completed package to PEP's Invoice Center at TxDOT.gov using the standard subject line indicated at the beginning of this video.